let's talk about it.
Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Thicc Radio, the podcast where we talk about gaining and everything in its orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it.
You know, I know we do these special episodes every now and again, just a little extra something for the peeps. But you know, Tim, you and I were having a bit of a catch-up re-podcast stuff just the other day, and there was this really gorgeous email that you were telling me about. Would you mind? What did this person say?
So from a listener, we received a lovely email that says, "Hi there. I have been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I have always wondered what it is like to accept that you want to gain, getting over hurdles, in parentheses, or in your case, running through the hurdles, and just generally trying to start out. I've been debating on whether or not I want to, or if I'd like to gain, but again, parentheses, aside from not just living alone / living with my family, I feel intimidated on even trying to start off and scared about making drastic changes to my body that I am not sure if I 100% want to keep, especially at such a young age, or that other lurkers turned gainers may be. I don't know if you'd like to respond in an email or make an episode about this, but hey, anything to help other lurkers turn gainers out there. I hope you have a good day." And they add also, if you decide to indulge in this topic further, maybe calling it starter to main course.
Okay. Well, to our special listener, thank you so much for submitting that. And, you know, before we go any further, any listeners out there who want to email us, please feel free, because we do receive these emails and we do read through them. Though admittedly, recently we've not been so proactive because, in fairness, there has been some personal things happening for some of us, and that has been rather taking up some time. But hey-ho, these things happen, that's life, and here we are. Thank you for writing in. The first thing that kind of comes to mind is, you know, this sort of conversation about lurker to gainer. And immediately that makes me think, you know, we recently released an episode called Lurker to Gainer, where we kind of talk on this subject really in depth. But to kind of surmise the points, Tim, what would you say the kind of theme of that episode was?
I think the theme of that boiled down to taking risks, rather, because we do talk about that often, about sometimes you have to take chances in order to get anywhere. And I took a leap personally when I went from lurker to gainer, and have had, you know, overwhelmingly a positive experience from it, you know. So I think that was sort of the general mood of that episode, was like, just take a chance, see what happens. I mean, you'll never really know what happens until you give it a try.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The next thing it kind of made me think of, you know, because sharing our own experiences, we actually did that very early on in the podcast run, and that was the formation of the gaining experience, where you and I really kind of sat down and nutted out for the first time what it was that really inspired us to kind of start things off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think for anyone who might be interested in hearing more of our personal stories on the matter, that episode might be worth sort of rehashing. But I think the sort of similar theme, again, with that episode, was that it was about taking chances, and how you just don't know what will happen. You don't know how your body's going to turn out. You don't know what will happen with your health. There are many things we don't know. We could all die in a bomb fight tomorrow, girl. We honestly don't know.
You know, World War III could consume the planet anytime. So
it could be coming for our asses and we wouldn't even know about it. And I think, you know, life is so short. When you really look at kind of like the scope and scale of what things are, you do kind of reach a point where you're like, fuck it, I'm just going to do this, and I'll roll with it. And roll you shall, especially if you get to a very spherical size you may. And maybe you can't walk. All you can do is roll with it. But I would say, for Tim and myself, I don't regret this journey.
No, neither do I. And I do think it's worth pointing out that, yes, weight gain is drastic, and it can be very difficult to get rid of, but not impossible. No weight change to the body is permanent. So if you do start to gain and you really just don't like the way that it looks on you, or you don't like the other physical changes that happen, you can get rid of it. Will it be more difficult? Yeah. I mean, I think the the entire planet struggles with weight loss, but it's not impossible to achieve.
I'm just pondering if there are any other episodes that immediately come to mind with this narrative.
Well, I mean, what's one of the major themes of this podcast in general is managing expectations. And because so many people arrive in this community based on a fantasy or what they fantasize it's going to be like, it comes back to the managing expectations, because what you think is going to happen may not be what actually happens.
Well, and that kind of brings up two more episodes that come to mind. Another early episode for us, which was fantasy versus reality, which we cover that exact topic from stern to stem. It's managing that expectation. But also another episode that came out not terribly long ago, My 500-Pound Life, where we interviewed a member of the community who did the damn thing, got to that size, and is making particular life choices, and spoke very plainly about their experiences with personal hygiene, with wiping after the bathroom, with showering, with...
Yeah, we got into the nitty-gritty of what it means to be that large and go about your daily life.
So, it's interesting, this sort of narrative about when people are uncertain about gaining. I sometimes wonder to myself, what is that uncertainty about? Because sometimes it might be about family, it might be about these things, but sometimes it is about this perception of a reality that we assume of things. I've seen these 500-pounders, I've seen these people who've thrown themselves into gaining and they seem to struggle so much. I don't know if I'm prepared for that for myself. And the reality is often very different from the fantasy that people portray online. But similarly, we really don't have a tendency as a community to show diversity in experience. We tend to assume if you're only 200 pounds, it's because you're too chicken shit to throw yourself into gaining properly. And if you're 500 pounds, then, you've got to be the slobbiest, piggiest mess, just oinking and rolling around in your own filth. Otherwise, you're not living like a proper gainer. And it's weird. We don't seem to have this narrative of like super chubs who like to go for walks, or like people who are 200 pounds who don't want to get bigger than that, and how that's okay. And
yeah,
that narrative dissonance that we don't explore very much.
I just feel like I think because so much of it is centered around a fantasy, that we don't really have much in the way of just how to be a pedestrian gainer. Like if you're going to be one, it's almost as if you have to like you said, throw yourself into the like, I'm a pig and this is my lifestyle now and this is what I'm doing. Like we don't really talk at all about how you just go about living your everyday life. I think in that 500-pound episode, didn't we also cover what it's like to have like a desk job, and furniture that you have to buy that can support that amount of weight? And
just about, but I think we may have even done an episode about being fat and being...
Oh, we did being fat in the workplace or something along those lines.
Working in a bigger body, which came on Christmas time last year. So this kind of coming back to, okay, I'll say this. Sometimes I think people feel like we revisit certain topics a bit on the show. Like, oh, you're talking about this, but you kind of half already spoken about it here. And to a degree, that's true. But also, it's important to be able to rehash things. Every person that I have asked about like listening to this show, maybe like 2 people have said to me that they have listened to every single episode religiously. Most people will very much pick and choose which episodes they listen to. And I think that's fine.
Yeah, I would assume that that's what people are doing anyway. I don't think that every topic is something that everyone wants to listen to. And I hope that people aren't too annoyed at us bringing things up too often, because God knows I reference my late husband way too much.
And I do a Jennifer Coolidge impression in case no one's heard that before. That all of these things, they're new news to everyone. But, certain impressions and stories and characters and narratives revisit themselves over and over again because everything is interlinked, which means sometimes the same experience or the same story will inform different learnings or different understandings of different situations. And people may have only heard these stories once, or they may not have even heard them at all, because the various episodes we've mentioned them on, people haven't listened to. So I don't think it necessarily matters. Ultimately, it's all the same advice, which is just experience.
Yep.
opening up,
Yep.
find new things, manage expectations, take a deep breath, move on, all this kind of stuff. But hey, that's what we do. So reflecting on the letter from before, I know that the listener had mentioned about health and about an uncertainty due to their young age. And I think we've had some guests on who started their gaining journey quite young, and in fact I think some people somehow, I don't know how, find the chutzpah to do this shit while they're like living at home around their parents. I don't know how they manage that. I don't know that I ever could have. But I would say comparatively, these are therefore clearly people who are so self-aware of what they want that even though they are young people living with parents, that they're like, I need to do this, therefore I'm going to go do this. Whereas you're not there. And that's okay. I think whether you do or don't do it is largely irrelevant. I think it's about getting to a point in your life where you feel okay with whatever decision you end up making.
Yeah.
You decide that you don't want to pursue it, it's because you've done the sort of thought work necessary to determine that you're okay with missing out on that potential satisfaction that you're toying with. And vice versa, if you decide to move forward with it, that you're at peace with changing and transforming your body in a way that other people might not be too kosher with.
What I was also going to say is you don't have to be a gainer to be a part of the belly fetish community. I mean, look at all the labels that exist within this community. You've got gainer, encourager, admirer, muscle gainer. I feel like I'm missing one.
Admirer, encourager, feeder.
Feeder, fetus. So whether or not you decide to gain, it does not preclude you from the community.
I would almost say, if you are an age where you are able to be on Grommr and make an account and meet with people, I would say do that and reach out to people, not even necessarily local to you if that's a discomfort, but people who clearly represent their label, people who are clearly passionate gainers and feeders and admirers and maintainers and all of that, and take the time to talk to them, get to know them, and figure out, how did you find out who you were? How did you come to this decision? Because one, you'll probably find that the majority of them have changed and transferred labels a million times within the community, because we all do to a degree. But second of all, their insight on how they came to their confidence might resonate with you in a way that's much more helpful than anything Tim and I could say. So, yeah. Thank you for writing in. Tim, do you feel like there's anything we haven't touched on with regards to their letter?
No, I don't think so. I think I felt like I was going to add something, and it was probably along the lines of, if you're young, because I notice this a lot with young gainers, the ability to lose the weight if you don't like it seems to be much easier when you're younger. Because I've seen a lot of young gainers like gain weight very quickly and then decide that they want to like step it back a bit, lose some weight, and then when they're older, they come back and they finally really dive into the gaining. So should you choose to go down that path and you put on some weight and you don't like it, it should be fairly easy for you to lose it if you're like from the like 18 to 26 range.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think if I was to sum everything up with one little bit of advice, it would be just take the time. Know that you're worth it, and know that the solution that you're looking for is not about choosing one or the other. It's about being at peace with what's right for you, not necessarily what's right for other people. That's a wrap for now here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave a good review. If you liked this episode, this podcast, or just us in general, share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at ThickyMouse. You can also look us up on TikTok at Thicc Radio, or at our website, www.podpage.com/Thicc Radio. And if you want to submit any questions or ideas for episodes, you can reach us at thiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Anchor app podcast produced by Stan and Thiccy Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by Stan.
Our artwork is provided by Lokitu.
Our theme song is provided by Body by Cream.